Welcome to the podcast series on technology and innovation in coaching, brought to you by the Association for Coaching, the world's leading independent body. I am Claudia, coach and entrepreneur and founder of eHuddle. In this AC podcast series, we are privileged to talk to coaches, academics, and entrepreneurs who will be sharing with us some of their research, findings, and experiences related to technologies that could help us democratize coaching, elevate the coaching practice, lower cost, or save time, among other benefits. This is a very broad topic, going from how technologies can support a coach or carry out a coaching process. We hope this series brings technology closer to coaches. Enjoy listening. Welcome to Nicky Terblanche. It is great to have you with us. Nicky is an academic, researcher, executive coach, and entrepreneur, creator of Coach Vici and Coach Vici. Nicky, I will let you tell us more about it and you.
Great, thanks, Claudia. Thank you for inviting me. Yes, as you mentioned, I wear many different hats. My background is in electronic engineering and software engineering. And I then later on transitioned to the human side of things, which involves obviously coaching and developing people. And I've always looked for a way to combine the two. And therefore, I ended up on this entrepreneurial stint with developing AI coaching chatbots that we've shown to be surprisingly good at what they do.
Nice. Thanks, Nicky. If you had to explain from the beginning to a group of coaches that were frozen in time and have just arrived 10 years later to 2021 and are seeing all that is happening, how would you explain what they need to know about AI?
First of all, I would say that AI is not, in 2021 at least, not as great as people think it is. That's the first myth to debunk. I think a lot of hype has been created around AI, partly from people looking for investors, to attract investors. And often what happens is the hype leads to inflated expectations and then eventually disappointment. It's not, incidentally, not the first time this has happened. AI has actually started back in the 1950s after the Second World War, based on the technology developed during the Second World War. And at the time, there was also a lot of hype created around what it could potentially do. Lots of governments and organizations invested money in AI, only to be disappointed 10 years down the line. And that's what was the first AI winter. It was actually a drop-off in interest. And we had a second AI winter. So, long story, but basically, be careful of what you hear about AI. Be careful of what you hear it's capable of doing, because we're not actually there. But having said that, it does hold incredible potential if it's applied correctly. And if we use strong theories and evidence-based practice, especially in coaching, I think it can play a very important role going forward, which we can explore further in this discussion.
Yes, definitely. Looking forward to hearing about that. You yourself are working with certain technologies for coaching. Maybe you can share a bit of that with us.
Yeah, so when I was looking to create an artificial intelligence coach, it was basically because I attended a number of seminars and conferences where I heard people speak about AI coaching, but from a conceptual perspective. They were speculating about what is possible with AI coaching and what is not possible. And I found that a bit frustrating because as an ex-engineer, I wanted to build stuff and test it and see what works and what not. So I then decided to go ahead and actually create an AI coach. But first of all, I wanted to understand how to create a good AI coach. So I did some desk research, which culminated in a paper that was published in the International Journal of Evidence-Based Coaching and Mentoring. And it's a design framework for AI coaches. And this framework basically takes the best aspects of human coaching, what makes human coaching successful, and marries that with aspects of good AI coaching design. So when it comes to AI coaching, it's vast. The question is, should I build a robot that looks like a human with arms and legs, or should it just be on a conversational level? So I eventually decided to go for chatbots. So a chatbot is a conversational agent. And the design framework then is specifically around best practices of chatbot design, marrying that with human coaching. So at the moment, the tools I'm playing around with is creating numerous types of chatbot coaches to embed coaching theory and coaching approaches. And then I've used that in experiments and research with people to see what works, what doesn't work, and how well it works.
Within your research, you did some about voice and text and the difference between those and how it's received by humans. Can you share a bit more of that with us?
Yeah, the wonderful thing of doing research is, and presenting it to the world, people contact me afterwards and they want to collaborate or they want to find out more about how we can work together. So I found such a person in Dr. Glenn Wallace from the UK, who happened to have created voice-based chatbots. So his chatbots use voice recognition to understand what I'm saying, what people are saying, and then responds in voice. My chatbot, I used text only, so you type and the responses in text. So we were talking one day, and we became curious about, okay, well, what works best? Talking to a chatbot and having it speak back to you, or typing. So we then devised a very simple experiment where I created a very simple text-based conversation. It's basically a chatbot asking you, what do you want to achieve by the end of the day? What could stop you from achieving that? Helping you think and reflect through certain actions. And Glenn then developed the voice equivalent of that. So it's a short 2-minute conversation. And then we tried this out with about 400 participants. We split it in half. So half of the people used the text bot, the other half used the voice bot. And it was a between group study. So one group only used one, and a different group used the other modality. And we tested a few things. We wanted to know, what do people find more usable? Is it easier to use a text bot or easier to use a voice bot? We also asked, what are people's performance expectations? Do they think the voice bot would be better at helping them achieve their goals, or would the text bot be better at helping them achieve their goals? And also risk. We wanted to assess whether people thought it's more risky to use the text bot than the voice bot. For example, I thought people would think it's more risky to use a voice bot because your voice is recorded. And with voice recognition, you could identify someone and you could maybe break the privacy and data confidentiality. And then we also threw in extroversion as a personality type. We speculated that maybe introverts would like to type rather than talk, and extroverts might be the other way around. So a lot of variables that we threw in there, and then we ran the experiment, and we got the results. And the paper is currently under review. And the basis of, I'll just summarize quickly what we found, is that generally the introverts were more comfortable to talk to the voice bot than to type. So they thought the voice bot is more usable than typing. In terms of performance expectancy, everyone thought, so all users, introverts and extroverts, thought that the text bot will be able to help them achieve their goals. And then when it came to risk, there was no clear statistical difference between any of the groups. So to summarize it all, what we concluded is that if chatbot designers, it seems that if you use voice, people have the perception that it's easier to use, not just the introverts, the all-over group as well. There was a tendency. It seems easier to use, but if you want to perform complex tasks, for example, explaining your goal or typing out lots of, providing lots of detail that you might want to go back and change, it seems that text is actually better. So our recommendation is use voice modality for the introductions and the easy parts to build rapport, for example. But when it comes to complicated tasks, people seem to prefer to type because they have a chance to correct and change. So very interesting finding that came from just a short discussion or a discussion between two like-minded people.
Yeah. You also have some work that you've done with specifically on goal setting with Coach Vici, and you also did some research about that. Do you want to share some of that with us?
Yes, that was another fascinating study. Basically, I created Coach Vici, which comes from Veni, Vidi, Vici, Julius Caesar's I came, I saw, I conquered. So the Vici bit is the conquering bit. When I wanted to create a chatbot initially, AI coach, I thought, what is the thing that makes coaching fairly unique? And I know it's debatable, not everyone agrees, but there is some consensus that coaching is different from other helping professions in its goal orientation. I know there are, like I say, schools of thought that disagree with that, but at least it's different to therapy and counseling in that concept, the pure goal side of it. So I created Coach Vici to be a goal-attaining chatbot. It uses basically the GROW model, which we're all familiar with as coaches, and then goal attainment theory to help people achieve their goals. So the first study we did was just to do user acceptance, user adoption testing. We can talk about that maybe a bit later. It's just to see which factors people consider inhibiting or encouraging them to use the chatbot. But that was not sufficient because I still didn't know how well Coach Vici is at what it does. It does. So the efficacy, basically. So I then collaborated with people from researchers from the UK, Joanna Molan from Oxford Brookes, Eric De Haan from Asridge, and Victor Nielsen, who was our statistician. And by the way, just on a side note, I've realized the power of collaboration if you want to explore new technologies. I think anywhere in life, it's just incredibly powerful to collaborate with people. People bring so many new and different ideas to the table. So on my own, I wouldn't have been able to do this research. But anyway, so it just so happens that I met Joanna at a conference in Switzerland, a coaching conference in 2018, where I expressed my passion for AI coaching and all these chatbots I want to build. And she mentioned that they had just completed a very significant coaching study where they had the gold standard in coaching research, which is a randomized, not just in coaching research, in all research, randomized controlled trial longitudinal study. So that means for the people that are not in research, randomized controlled trial is where you have different groups, at least two groups. For one group, you give the intervention, in this case, a human coach, and then there's a second control group that gets placebo. They might just get material to read on the topic. So Joanna and her team had conducted a study spanning over 10 months where 100 people were receiving 6 human coaching sessions by 100 different coaches. You can just imagine the logistics in trying to organize that. It's a very difficult study to do. And the other 100 didn't get any coaching. They measured 4 things over 4 constructs, variables over a 10-month period. They measured whether there was a reduction in stress, whether there was increased resilience, whether there was increased well-being, and whether goal attainment was also improved. And they found after 10 months that in the human coaching group, all those 4 variables improved. So thank goodness, now we know human coaching works once again. So that was a very good study. And this is now back to my AI coaching, where we decided, well, what if we now repeat the study, another 10 months, but instead of human coaches, we use my coach Vici, the AI coach. Now remember, coach Vici was designed only to perform goal attainment. So we repeated the test. Also, it's a very complex design. You have to follow up with people regularly. 10 months is a lot of time to keep people engaged in the research. But basically, to summarize, we found that after 10 months, the group that used Coach Vici, remember there were now 2 groups again, the Coach Vici group and then the control group who had no intervention. After 10 months, the people that used Coach Vici were not better off in stress reduction. They were not better off in resilience or in well-being. That was the same between the 2 groups. So Coach Vici had no effect on those 3, but Coach Vici had a significant effect in improving people's goal attainment compared to the control group. So we were very excited to see that this chatbot actually works. And then we went one step further by then comparing the 2 studies, the human coaching study with the AI chatbot coaching study, only for goal attainment, because of course the other 3 variables did not improve. And we were even more surprised to see that the AI coach, Coach Vici, was pretty much almost as good as a human coach. If you look at the graph, it was able to improve almost as good as the human coach. And in fact, at the end, after 10 months, the 2 groups were exactly the same in terms of their goal attainment. So we concluded that the Coach Vici was as good as a human coach after 10 months to help people with their goal attainment. And in fact, it was a 55% increase in goal attainment versus a 24% increase in goal attainment from the 2 control groups that did not get any intervention. So very exciting times when we saw that.
So the way you're describing it, basically, it's very narrow in that it can only solve for goal attainment. Are you looking to expand it to also be able to look at the other or improve the other variables?
Yes, so the reason I decided only on goal attainment initially was because of the limitations of AI. I think if you try and be too clever and do too many things, it falls flat. Also, it was an initial stab at this. It was an initial attempt. But certainly, when you look broader than coaching literature, so if you search for AI coaching research, there are very, very few studies that I've seen. Some of my papers are under review, so even they don't appear yet. There's very few empirical studies. But if you look at psychology and counseling and healthcare, there are empirical studies that have shown that chatbots can improve people's resilience and well-being and even reduce stress. So that is a given. So yes, in terms of Coach Vici specifically, we are looking at a number of options. The one is to add these components to it, but maybe as separate chatbots. Maybe you work on goal attainment separately from reduced stress, for example. But of course, it would use different theories. And I just want to stay as pure as possible to coaching, because coaching is not a pure science either. But as soon as we go into wellness and stress, it borders on the psychological domain. And I'm not a psychologist, so I would have to partner with someone that can advise on that. But certainly, it would be possible.
So this brings us back to what you said about AI being very basic at the moment, and how at the moment it's more narrow. How do you see it evolving over time?
Yeah, so maybe it's a good point to talk about the different types of artificial intelligence. In literature, they distinguish between three types at the moment. There's artificial narrow intelligence, artificial general intelligence, and then artificial super intelligence. So narrow intelligence is a machine that can do one task really, really well, probably better than a human in some cases. Artificial general intelligence is a machine that can operate at the same intellectual level of intelligence as a human. It could be a machine sitting here instead of me, and you could be interviewing that machine. You wouldn't know the difference. And then artificial super intelligence is a machine that is superior to human intelligence. Now, at the moment, general intelligence and super intelligence does not exist. And if you look at the experts in the field, most of them are saying that within our lifetime, we probably will not see machines that can embody general and super intelligence. The reason that I've seen is that the type of technology needed to facilitate that doesn't currently exist. We need to have a breakthrough in the type of technology that's being used. Because it's interesting, a lot of the algorithms like neural networks, artificial neural networks, they're now called deep learning, actually hasn't changed since the 1980s. It's the same algorithms and the same statistical probability models being used. It's just that processing power has increased significantly. And of course, what's needed is massive data sets. And with big data, that's becoming more available. So the one argument is, if we get larger data sets of better quality and we get increased processing power using current technology, we might approach general intelligence. The other school of thought says, it doesn't matter how fast your processing power is, doesn't matter how good your databases are and how large they are, the current technology cannot get us there. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, at this point, I don't know which one I wish for. It is definitely a scary thought as well as exciting. So that makes sure, let's see what comes. You also mentioned how your research helps as well in understanding technology adoption. So can you expand a little bit more on this?
Yeah, so the way I see it, there are two types of studies one can do when you look at the artificial intelligence coaching, I guess any technology. There is the efficacy study, so how good does this thing work? How does it compare to humans and other machines? But the other study that's very well known in information systems and in technology study is something called technology adoption studies. So this looks at factors that will determine whether people will use the technology or not. And there are various well-validated models for this. The most well-known one is the technology adoption model, or TAM, which looks at the intention, what are the factors that will help, that will influence people intention to use the technology, and then the actual usage of the technology. I used something slightly more advanced, which is called the Unified Theory of the Acceptance and Use of Technology, UTAUT, which is an adaptation of TAM. And it basically looks at 4 factors to see whether it will determine the use of technology. The first one is perception of efficacy, or performance expectancy. So there's about 4 or 5 questions asking people, do you think this technology will be able to perform the task that it's intended to do? So for coaching, we would ask, do you think this chatbot will be able to help you achieve your goal? Do you think it's useful using this chatbot? Things like that. So performance expectancy. Then there's effort expectancy. How much effort is involved in using the technology? Is it difficult to use? Is it cumbersome? Because people won't use it then. The next one is social influence, which talks about what do other people think about you using the technology? Is it socially acceptable to use the technology? And then the fourth one is infrastructure. It's basically, do you have the necessary infrastructure? Do you have internet connection? Is it difficult to get hold of a phone or the device that you have to use? So we use those 4, and we added a 5th one, risk, which I mentioned before. This is basically because these days, with data privacy and all the stories we hear about data breaches, we thought it would be interesting to see what people's thoughts on those are. So then we design a study where we use those 5 factors. We get people to have one conversation with Coach Vici, and then we ask them to complete the survey. And then we do very fancy statistics, which I outsource to my statisticians. It's called structured equation modeling, which is not looking for correlations. It's actually doing a prediction. So it's an advanced statistical model where you can say this factor actually will predict the use of technology, not that there's just a correlation between the two. Long story short is we found that of the 5 factors, there were 3 that were significant in predicting the use of people's intention to use AI coaching, with one particularly strong. The strongest predictor was performance expectancy. So people will use the chatbot, the AI coach, if they think it will help them with the task that it claims to. So that I found very interesting, but it's almost intuitive. We're so busy these days. If someone puts a piece of technology on the table, you'll probably only pick it up if you know it's going to do what it says it does. Not because it's cute or looks cool, or maybe some people will, but most of us will want to see the performance. The second important factor, which was social influence. People said they would use Coach Vici more often, and they would use it generally if it is endorsed by their friends and their family and their colleagues. That we also found very interesting. So there is this, because it's quite new, if other people also use it, they feel more comfortable using it. And the last one was the infrastructure. So they did feel that, obviously there must be the internet and there must be a phone. We launched it on a smartphone, on Telegram and Facebook Messenger. What was not important to people is the effort involved. They didn't think it's a great effort. Effort wasn't a problem, which probably says something about the way we designed the chatbot. It's very easy and intuitive to interact with. Also, they weren't concerned about risk. They didn't think that it's anything particularly risky. I think if you evaluate mobile banking or electronic banking software, for example, you'll find that risk might increase because people are worried about their financial. But with Coach Vici, you don't divulge anything personal except your conversation. There's no personal information. We also found that older people, because we moderated for age and gender in all 5 of those things to see if age and gender plays a role, older people the effort involved became an issue. So the older the cohort, the more effort it seemed to use this technology. And then in terms of gender, women generally felt, for women it was even more important than for men, that the chatbot can perform what it claims to be doing. So our conclusion from that, this is now the stats and the research, but when we roll out Coach Vici to organizations, because we make it available as a product for corporates and we can talk about that maybe later as well, for corporates to allow all their people to have access to some sort of coaching, not just the operational. We recommend that they must clearly communicate and promote the efficacy of the chatbot. Performance expectancy, right? That was the most important factor. So if you loud and clearly communicate in your sales pitch to your internal staff that this thing really works, they're more likely to use it. From the social perspective, we then also recommend that you should get early adopters, people that are influential, who like the technology, to talk about it and make a bit of excitement around the technology, because our research showed that would help people to use it. And finally, in terms of infrastructure, we decided not to build a separate app for Coach Vici, because research has shown that there are too many apps and people download these apps and they use it once and never again. So we wanted to use an existing platform. Now we rolled it out on Telegram and Facebook Messenger. And for this study, we only used Telegram. And because Telegram, it's an instant messaging platform like WhatsApp, in some countries it's not widely used. It could inhibit actually the uptake of it. So one must be very careful about what platform you roll it out on, because that will influence adoption.
Yeah, very important for companies to consider these. And then you have, of course, the chicken and the egg. You need people to use it to be able to talk about it. So a great starting point, which is the research that shows that it's positive and that brings the numbers up. Based on all this research that you have done, what is your view of the potential of technology and the use of technology in coaching?
Yeah, so it's interesting you phrase it like that. You ask about technology, because technology, of course, in general is quite broad. And I think, and then there's AI as a subset of general technology. So I think technology has been with us for a long time in coaching. It's not going away. This kind of virtual coaching that we're doing with COVID has become entrenched now. I'm a practicing coach as well. And since April last year, I haven't coached anyone face to face. It's all been like this, with significant success. It's also been able to expand my market because location isn't an issue. So technology, I think, is here to stay. We only have to look at some of the coaching platforms that are being developed. I think it's adding immense value in terms of both connecting coach and client, keeping track of sessions, but also other additional things like storing assessments within the platform and note-taking, all sorts of things. I think it's the future. In terms of AI specifically, AI coaching, it's relatively new, and as we understand it better and we do more research, we'll be able to apply it specifically as well. But I think it holds huge potential on a number of levels. First of all, I would say, is about scaling of coaching, what I didn't coin the term, but I like the term democratization of coaching. Just a bit of a sidetrack, I did some research recently in Africa. I'm from South Africa, so we used the African continent as a base to survey coaches on a number of aspects of coaching practice. And we had about 350 responses, if I remember correctly. One of the things we asked them is, how much do you charge for your coaching sessions? And the average rate of coaching, organizational coaching in Africa, is $100 per hour. Now, as people will know, in the UK, in Europe, in America, it's much more than that. It's probably $200-300 per hour. The other interesting finding was the number of qualified coaches. ICF, the National Coach Federation, is the largest body, so I use them as a reference. There are only 2,000 registered coaches in all of Africa for the ICF, and Africa is a continent of 1.3 billion people. So, two points from this: there are not enough coaches in Africa, and it's very expensive. $100, even in organizations, it's a lot of money in Africa. Not even to talk about life coaching, which goes beyond corporate. So, coaching is unaffordable for most people in the world, even in organizations in Europe and across the world. So, I think AI coaching, we've shown now that it's really effective in a very narrow field. So obviously it can't replace a human coach in all aspects, but even for that narrow thing that we coded, we designed it for, it could really help people at a fraction of the cost, literally a fraction of the cost. Plus it's available 24/7. So it also alleviates the scarcity of coaching skills. So that's the one role I see AI coaching playing. It's a huge role. Just to stay on that for a while, in South Africa, for example, the youth unemployment rate is over 70%. Overall, the employment rate is 35%, which is already horrendous. But youth unemployment is up to 70%. And we're busy with a research study at the moment where we've given Coach Vici to unemployed youth through a non-profit organization. We're waiting for the results. But imagine if something like Coach Vici can help unemployed people set their goals and move a step closer to finding employment. It could be incredible. So the social and I almost want to say humanitarian implications of AI coaching could be immense. Secondly, in organizational coaching, I like this idea of a coaching culture, which I've read a few articles about recently, which means within an organization, there are many facets of coaching, and ultimately you want the organization to have a culture of coaching, which includes executive coaching at the top, external, well-qualified human coaches that work with the executives. At the next level, you could have something like team coaching, where it's more cost-effective. You get groups of people together, you coach them in a team. You also get internal coaching, maybe where internally people paid by the organization on their payroll can provide coaching services. The notion of leader as coach or manager as coach is becoming very popular. So we see that companies are training their managers and leaders on basic coaching skills, how to use a grow model, how to do listening and questioning. So that's all part of a coaching culture. But now I see AI coaching as filling all the other gaps. It's almost like having objects in a container, but there's holes in between it. And when you pour the water in, everything is filled. So I would see AI coaching as filling the gaps by providing these basic coaching services to absolutely everyone, from the lowest paid junior employer to whoever wants to use it right at the top. Again, a cost-effective and scalable manner.
Yeah, it's that perspective of the world is very big, and some coaches are afraid it will substitute coaches, but it's also an opportunity to bring coaching to so many others that are not receiving it at the moment.
Exactly.
And on that note, how could it also complement coaching?
Yes, that's the question I always get asked by coaches. In fact, because I run the master's program at University of Stellenbosch in South Africa, where we train. It's a 2-year master's degree in coaching. So when I lecture the students in the beginning on AI coaching, some of them are not very impressed. They say, we've paid a hell of a lot of money for this course, and here you are telling us there's AI coaching that's going to replace us. And of course, after I tell them it's not going to, they're happier about it. But what's in it for coaches? I think, let's first see how it can be used. It can be used as a standalone entity, an AI coach, which doesn't involve any human coaching. That's how we've positioned Coach Vici. But even that does not take away from human coaching, because what we've done with Coach Vici is to, in the conversation where the chatbot senses that the person is maybe getting stuck, maybe their goals are not progressing as they should, the chatbot Coach Vici would suggest, why don't you try a human coach? And then we have a handover process to a website, coachvici.com, where there's a panel of coaches that you can then buy specific sessions to be coached by a human coach. So in that sense, I think AI coaching can expand the human coaching market. If more people that have never before been exposed to coaching get a glimpse of coaching through AI, it could actually encourage them to look for the real thing, which is the human coaching. And the second part of this is that AI coaching can also be used in conjunction with a human coach. So Coach VD, which you mentioned before, is the second chatbot that I'm busy working on. And there's a website, coachvd.com. And then, of course, VD would be the middle of Julius Caesar's exclamation, Veni, Vidi, Vici. I came, I saw, I conquered. So it's about seeing. And we designed VD around helping clients to reflect about the human coaching sessions in between the human coaching sessions. So the idea is you have a human coaching session, and then the 2 or 3 weeks that passes, you would interact with Coach VD, who will then ask you to reflect on what happened in the coaching session, how what you've done so far, what you want to discuss with your coach, things like that. So a reflective space. And we believe that, and then the coach can, of course, have insight into that conversation later on when you see the coach again. So it's a tool, because also with human coaching, you make an appointment to see someone at a certain time. Maybe you're not feeling your best, you don't want to cancel, so now you go through the process. With Coach VD or any AI coach, you can decide when you want to use it, when you feel comfortable, when you're in the right mindset for it. So certainly, as a standalone tool, it can help expand the need for human coaches. But as a helper for human coaching, I think it could also increase the efficacy. We have to test this still. We're busy designing a study next year where we will actually do a randomized control trial longitudinal with two groups. Two groups of people, a human coaching and two human coaching groups, but one of them will get the chatbot AI coach as additional help. And then we'll see. Maybe it has no effect. Who knows? I'm one of those people who don't want to claim efficacy and claim things work without doing the research. So we'll have to wait for a year to see the answer.
Yeah, sounds amazing. How would you recommend, how can people learn more about it?
So Coach Vici at the moment is available for now for free to the public. So you can go to the website coachvici.com. Vici is spelled V-I-C-I. There you'll find a lot of detail about it and also instructions how to use it in Telegram or Facebook Messenger. If people want to use it in their organizations, we have a different approach where we then customize Coach Vici for the organization. So we put the organization's branding in, and we also include some other resources and links to existing employee assistance aspects in Coach Vici. So Coach Vici becomes the portal into the help that you offer your clients. So that's the one website, and then coachvd.com is the other one. They can have a look at that website. At the moment, that's not. They can contact me if they want a demo, because we're still busy putting final touches on that.
And if they want to contact you?
Yes, also on the website, coachvici.com or coachvd.com, there's an email. Otherwise, they could contact me. They can hook up on LinkedIn. That's where I post all my research. So they can just search for my name and surname, Nicky Terblanche, on LinkedIn. And they'll also find my contact details there if they connect with me.
Okay, Nicky. So before we finish, can you tell us a bit of how you see the future evolving?
Yes, so I have a number of research projects in mind. The problem is that they get more complex to run as we find more results. But there are two major projects that I want to tackle soon. The first one I mentioned earlier is the hybrid. So if you use human coaching with AI or only human coaching. And I finally seem to have found a group of other researchers that can help me with that. Because the problem is, imagine this now: you need 200 human coaches, which is split in two, right? And they have to coach people for at least 6 months, because we've seen with goal attainment, it takes at least 3 months before anything happens. I did a short study with one of my students where we looked at a 3-month period of a control group and AI group, and after 3 months, there was no difference. After 3 months, there was an uptick in the AI users' goal attainment, but 3 months is too short. So where do you find 200 coaches who will either for free, coach people and ask their clients to complete surveys once a month? That's very difficult. And if you pay them, you can imagine the cost. But I found now a group of people that can use my chatbot in an existing coaching program that's already running. So that's fantastic news. So watch the space. We will soon, in a year from now, have results on whether human plus AI is better than human coaching only. The second, even more challenging project is to create a generative AI coach. So let me just explain that a bit. Currently, Coach Vici and Coach VD has a scripted response. So we use thorough theory, and we use UX designers, and to the best of our knowledge, how best to interact with people with Coach Vici and VD. But it's not, cannot really adapt its conversation. So it'll follow a similar path always. It's a scripted response. That's what we call retrieval based. So it retrieves the same answer given, a similar answer given to what the person has said. The next step is generative based. This means we want to take large database of pre-recorded coaching conversations, hundreds of coaching conversations. We want to then feed that into a neural network, so use deep learning, to ask the neural network to figure out what typically does a coach say after a client has said X, Y, Z. Now, you can imagine how difficult that is, because coaching conversations all varied, right? But I found a database that uses a very specific type of coaching conversation structure. It'll be like the GROW model. So with GROW model, you always know there's a GRO, And the next step is then to collaborate with the computer science department of a university to take this large database that I've gotten hold of, train these models so that when you talk to Coach Vici next generation, it will actually hopefully be able to intelligently interpret what you say and respond in a human way. Whether that's going to work, we'll have to see. That might take more than a year, but that's the task on hand for the future.
Looking forward to that. And for our listeners to get to know you better, 2 more questions, which would be, what do you read for fun?
What I read for fun? Yes. My life is reading. I have 4 PhD students at the moment, and I have 7 master students. And every year there's a fresh batch of master students. So I read so much that at the end of the workday, I don't really read anything else. I read the latest research. That's my job, and that's my passion. So latest research, and then I don't mind on holiday a good Booker Prize winner or a good fiction that takes me completely out of my world. I recently started reading the book Overstory, which is it was the Booker Prize winner, which I quite enjoy. But my escape is more into movies. So at the end of the day, I love good science fiction and a good drama, just to take my mind off things.
Any favorite latest movie that you've watched?
It's such. I like Netflix series. There's so many, not many good ones at the moment. So I rewatched Stranger Things recently. I absolutely love that. And then, of course, Game of Thrones was one of my all-time favorites. And I love Dune, actually, is the latest movie that I really enjoyed, because I've read the book several times. It's a classic, and I think they did a great job on the movie.
Nice. And then the final one is 5 objects that you have around you, and what relevance do they have?
At the moment as I'm sitting here, or generally?
At the moment as you're sitting here.
Okay, my phone, obviously. Without my phone, I'm lost. Not just so relevance would be probably too connected to it, but it's become such a portal into the world. So I'm one of those people probably addicted to my phone. My water bottle, that's for hydration. Especially I run as well. So water and running goes well together. And then I actually have lots of paper clips and hair clips and magnets that I play around with when I sit at my desk all day long. And then my pen and my notebook. I like writing stuff down, even though it's this modern era. So always fidgeting with stuff and writing little notes. It seems to be my way.
Nice. I was going to say the aircon because that makes me very jealous that you're in a warm country.
To be fortunate to use an aircon, yes.
Well, thank you so much for spending the time with us, Nicky, and telling us everything about your research, which has been very interesting to hear. And we look forward to talking to you again in the future.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed sharing with you. Thank you very much.
So thank you for listening to another episode by the Association for Coaching. I have been Claudia Day. Our purpose is to help coaches in the process of navigating the new technologies that are arising in this field. If you would like to find out more, please follow us on LinkedIn or explore our webpage at theassociationforcoaching.com. There you can keep up to date with our latest episodes and conversations, as well as our digital learning calendar.